Ms. Gabbard, let me be clear, at least in my views. I salute your service to our country, but I have serious doubts about your judgment. And those are some of the areas that I want to pursue. First, until you were nominated by the president to be the DNI, you consistently praised the actions of Edward Snowden, some who, I believe, jeopardized the security of our nation, and then, in an effort to flaunt that, fled to Russia. You even called Edward Snowden, and I quote here, a brave whistleblower. Every member of this committee supports the rights of legal whistleblowers. But Edward Snowden isn't a whistleblower. And in this case, I'm a lot closer to the chairman's words, where he said Snowden is, quote, an egotistical, serial liar and traitor who, quote, deserves to rot in jail for the rest of his life. Ms. Gabbard, a simple yes or no question. Do you still think Edward Snowden is brave?
Mr. Vice Chairman, Edward Snowden broke the law. I do not agree with or support with all of the information and intelligence that he released, nor the way in which he did it. There would have been opportunities for him to come to you on this committee or seek out the IG to release that information. The fact is, he also, even as he broke the law, released information that exposed egregious, illegal, and unconstitutional programs that are happening within our government that led to serious reforms that Congress undertook.
Chairman, we got 5 minutes. So I take your answer, and these are your quotes. Brave, please join my bipartisan legislation calling for charges to be dropped against him. Do you disagree that legislation was not appropriate? Do you believe he is brave or not?
Yeah,
back those words?
Once again, Senator, Edward Snowden broke the law. He also released information that exposed the United States government's illegal programs. Your legislation
and your words are still your beliefs. Yes or no, please?
I'm making myself very clear. Edward Snowden broke the law. He released information about the United States government's illegal activities. If I may just finish my thoughts, Senator. In this role that I've been nominated for, if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, I will be responsible for protecting our nation's secrets, and I have 4 immediate steps that I would take to prevent another Snowden-like leak.
Ma'am, I would simply ask you again. I don't think you're going to answer. I agree with Tom Cotton. He's a traitor. You, for years, until you got chosen by President Trump, have celebrated this guy as brave. You've called for him to be pardoned, for his charges to be dropped. I cannot imagine a director of national intelligence that would say that kind of behavior is okay. How would we maintain the trust of the IC and the contractors who work for it? How would we maintain the trust of our Five Eyes partners? I find it very troubling.
Thank you.
That we got a chance to be able to spend together and be able to talk through a lot of these issues. Thanks for your service to the country, both in Congress, though you were in the wrong party at the time, and your service to the country through your service there, including in my great state in Oklahoma, that you had the opportunity to be able to serve there. I want to give an opportunity for you to be able to answer a few things on it, and I want to set some context. There's been a lot of questions about 702 and about Edward Snowden, and it may seem like this is repetitive to be able to come through it, but there are thousands of intelligence employees and folks that they have also taken an oath to the country and to the Constitution. They serve our country every day. They're the folks that don't have a uniform on, that no one ever says thank you to them, and no one ever buys them lunch because people don't know who they are. But they every day put their lives on the line, and they work very hard to be able to protect Americans. And when Edward Snowden got mad at his employer that he didn't get the promotion that he wanted, and started harvesting information, and then found some things that he didn't like on it, and then kept going, and then released them to media and went to China, and then went from China to Russia and became a Russian citizen and continued to be able to layer out intelligence unrelated to the civil liberties of any American, and then said, I have more and I can release them at any time I want. they don't see him as brave. They see him as a traitor. And the concern among so many here, and I think what a lot of the folks in the intelligence community that you'd have the responsibility to oversight is, they want to hear that you also believe the same thing, that not just he broke the law, but that he's a traitor, because they don't want that to ever happen again. And all the sources that they had, that they trusted and that trusted them, now their lives were at risk. And all the programs that they had that were determined lawful all collapsed, and that intelligence then was gone, and the president didn't have access to a lot of information for decision making. So this is a big deal to everybody here, because it's a big deal to everybody that you'll also oversee in that role as well. And so it's helpful for them to be able to hear your heart on this. So was Edward Snowden a traitor?
Who wouldn't enjoy a little more 5 times in their life?
Senator, my heart is with my commitment to our Constitution and our nation's security.
Ours too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have shown throughout my almost 22 years of service in the military, as well as my time in Congress, how seriously I take the privilege of having access to classified information and our nation's secrets. And that's why I'm committed, if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, to join you in making sure that there is no future Snowden-type leak, and I would do so by taking 4 specific actions. Number 1, again, to make sure that there are no illegal and unconstitutional programs, limiting in a big way those who have access to our nation's top secrets through security clearance reform, making sure that every single person in the workforce knows about the legal whistleblower channels available to them, and making sure that there's a direct line available to me should anyone have concerns. If people choose to step outside of those legal channels to raise any concerns about programs or actions that exist within the intelligence community that are classified, there will be no excuse to do so, and they should be charged and prosecuted under the law.
Was he a traitor at the time when he took America's secrets, released them in public, and then ran to China and became a Russian citizen?
Senator, I'm focused on the future and how we can prevent something like this from happening again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Gabbard, Edward Snowden does stand out as having done particularly grave harm to our national security by revealing top secret information, including sensitive sources and methods, thus jeopardizing agents in the field. So let me ask you a question. If confirmed, would you support or recommend a pardon or any kind of clemency for Edward Snowden?
Thank you for the question, Senator Collins. If confirmed as the Director of National Intelligence, my responsibility would be to ensure the security of our nation's secrets and would not take actions to advocate for any actions related to Snowden.
So the answer is no. Is that correct?
Tulsi, good to see you. We had a nice visit in the office.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here today. It was clear from that visit in the office that we share a lot of concerns about ill-advised foreign regime change interventions, about the weaponization in certain instances of our domestic law enforcement and intel authorities. Let me talk about something, Edward Snowden, on which we may not agree. It's been recognized he fled overseas with the numbers 1.5 million classified documents. He shared them with the press. He absconded to China and Russia. Do you have any response to the bipartisan findings of the House Intel Committee, which stated that, quote, Snowden caused tremendous damage to national security, unquote, including to military, defense, and intelligence programs of great interest to America's adversaries? I'll give you an opportunity to respond, hopefully briefly.
Thank you, Senator. As I've said before, Edward Snowden broke the law, and I do not agree with how he chose to release information and the extent of the information and intelligence that he released. It's my focus on the future. And I think we can all agree that we do not want to have another Snowden-type leak, and I've laid out specific actions, if confirmed as DNI, to do that.
Okay. Well, it's notable you didn't say, yes, he clearly hurt in various ways our national security. The same House committee also reported that based on DoD assessments, should the Chinese or Russians access certain documents relating to DoD capabilities that we know Snowden stole, quote, American troops will be at greater risk in any future conflict, unquote. Do you have any reflection on this assessment?
I would be very concerned about that. I have not had access to the information or intelligence that led to that assessment, but anything that puts our men and women in uniform unnecessarily at risk should be a grave concern.
Yeah. I share that sentiment as a former Marine Corps intelligence officer. When we find that Americans, whether private citizens or contractors or uniformed personnel, have shared sensitive designs about military technology or plans to a foreign government, however well-intentioned, we rightfully throw the book at them. Snowden did just that, yet you have argued, and many times, that he should be pardoned. You introduced legislation, as has been discussed here. He's been able to publicly hide, as I see it, behind this facade of being a so-called whistleblower. But he likely endangered American lives through his actions. So as the leader of the intelligence community, how would you think you would be received based on some of these past actions to support or even to pardon Edward Snowden? Rank and file intelligence analysts and intelligence professionals. How do you think it'll be received?
I'm grateful, Senator, to have received letters of endorsement and support from many current and former individuals who've worked within the intelligence community, those who've worked or are still working within our military, because I believe they trust that my goal, my sole goal and interest is in our nation's security and upholding our oath to the Constitution. And they trust that if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, I will take the very specific steps that I have laid out in informing every single person within the intelligence community about the legal pathways they have to blow the whistle or to bring any concerns to the forefront, to include coming directly to members of Congress, to limit access so that we don't have people who are E3s or E4s or people in any situation taking it upon themselves to release classified information, giving them a direct line to me to once again make sure that we are all fulfilling our responsibility to ensure our national security and uphold our Constitution.
Thank you. Tulsi, was Edward Snowden false to an obligation or false to a duty?
I don't understand what you're saying. False?
He had, yes. Did he betray a duty? But did he betray the trust of the American people? Which is, according to Merriam-Webster, that's the definition of a traitor.
Edward Snowden broke the law, and he released this information in a way that he should not have. He also acknowledged and exposed information that was unconstitutional, which drove a lot of the reforms that this body has made over the years to make sure that Americans' constitutional rights are protected.
Well, for what it's worth, Mr. Snowden is watching these proceedings. He's posted on social media even, indicating that Tulsi Gabbard should indicate that I harmed national security. This may be the rare instance in which I agree with Mr. Snowden. I think it would befit you and be helpful to the way you are perceived by members of the intelligence community if you would at least acknowledge that the greatest whistleblower in American history, so-called, harmed national security by breaking the laws of the land around our intel authorities. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Young. Senator
I would like to repeat my colleague's question to you. Thank you for being here. To answer these questions and for your service. Was Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America?
Senator, I will also repeat my answer. He broke the law.
You said earlier that you were offended by a question that my colleague from Kansas asked, which I think was his duty as somebody on this committee to fulfill his responsibility to advise and consent. We are not here to be a rubber stamp for the President of the United States. So let me ask you again, do you believe, as the chairman of this committee believes, as the vast majority of members of our intelligence agencies believe, that Edward Snowden was a traitor to the United States of America?
Ray knows he needs to get those dental implants, but for
Senator,
of this committee believes, as the vast majority of members of our intelligence agencies believe, that Edward Snowden was a traitor to the United States of America.
Senator, if confirmed
This
as
is when the
Director of
rubber hits
National
the road.
Intelligence, I will work with you to make sure that there is not another Snowden-like
social
leak.
media. It's not a moment to propagate theories, conspiracy theories, or attacks on journalism in the United States. This is when you need to answer the questions of the people whose votes you're asking for to be confirmed as the Chief Intelligence Officer of this nation. As my colleague said, this is not about you. It's about the people that serve the intelligence agencies of the United States. Is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America? That is not a hard question to answer when the stakes are this high.
Senator, as someone who has
your
served
answer,
in
yes
uniform,
or no, is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America?
as someone who has
I'll go on
worn
to
our
my
uniform
questions.
in combat, I understand how critical our national security
Apparently
is.
you don't. Apparently you don't. I would like to repeat my colleague's question to you. Thank you for being here. To answer these questions and for your service. Was Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America?
Senator, I will also repeat my answer. He broke the law.
You said earlier that you were offended by a question that my colleague from Kansas asked, which I think was his duty as somebody on this committee to fulfill his responsibility to advise and consent. We are not here to be a rubber stamp for the President of the United States. So let me ask you again, do you believe, as the chairman of this committee believes, as the vast majority of members of our intelligence agencies believe, that Edward Snowden was a traitor to the United States of America?
Senator, if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, I will work with you to make sure that there is not another Snowden-like leak.
Media. It's not a moment to propagate theories, conspiracy theories, or attacks on journalism in the United States. This is when you need to answer the questions of the people whose votes you're asking for to be confirmed as the Chief Intelligence Officer of this nation. As my colleague said, this is not about you. It's about the people that serve the intelligence agencies of the United States. Is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America? That is not a hard question to answer when the stakes are this high.
Senator, as someone who has
your
served
answer,
in
yes
uniform,
or no, is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America?
as someone who has
I'll go on
worn
to
our
my
uniform
questions.
in combat, I understand how critical our national security
Apparently
is.
you don't. Apparently you don't.
And understand how you analyzed the facts leading up to your 2020 bill providing him with a pardon. There was the House committee report, which granted was redacted, but under the heading, "What damage did it cause?" were 5.5 pages of redacted material. I would have thought that would raise a question in your mind. Secondly, Edward Snowden, there are about 20 countries that don't have extradition treaties with the U.S. He chose to go to Russia, become a Russian citizen. Given that information, how did you decide to introduce a bill providing him with a pardon? Introducing a bill in the United States Congress is not the same as a tweet or a commentary on a podcast. I'm concerned about your apparent lack of interest in the scope of Edward Snowden's traitorous activities.
Senator, I've answered some version of this question many times in this hearing already. My foremost concern has been, remains, and will continue to be in upholding my oath to the Constitution to support and defend Americans' Fourth Amendment constitutional rights. If confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, I'm committed to ensuring that we protect our nation's secrets by implementing a number of actions I've outlined so that those who have concerns about programs within our intelligence community, that we don't have another Snowden-like leak, and they are able to raise those concerns either directly with Congress or through any one of a number of legal paths that are available. And I think it's also important, and in line with many of the bipartisan concerns I've heard from this committee, in security classification, security clearance and classification reform, in narrowing severely those who have access to the most sensitive and compartmentalized intelligence reporting and capabilities.
Senator Bennet.
Ms. Gabbard, Edward Snowden does stand out as having done particularly grave harm to our national security by revealing top secret information, including sensitive sources and methods, thus jeopardizing agents in the field. So let me ask you a question. If confirmed, would you support or recommend a pardon or any kind of clemency for Edward Snowden?
Thank you for the question, Senator Collins. If confirmed as the Director of National Intelligence, my responsibility would be